somewhere out in the quiet wild, the night is already doing what it does best, softening everything. Moonlight rests on the tips of grass like a gentle silver dusting. A thin layer of fog drifts low across the ground, unhurried, as if it has nowhere to be, because it doesn't. Nearby, a small pool of water holds the sky's reflection without trying to improve it. The wind moves slowly, like it's reading something peaceful and doesn't want to lose its place. Even the trees look like they're practicing deep breathing. Honestly, they're better at it than most of us. No apps, no reminders, just excellent form. Welcome to sleepy nature sleep, where the wild grows soft and curiosity becomes calm. Tonight, let your thoughts follow the rhythm of the earth. Your breathing settle like evening wind, and your mind wander gently through the quiet wild. If this place feels peaceful, you're always welcome back, like a quiet campfire you can return to whenever you want. No membership card required, no secret handshake, only your presence. And maybe your pillow, if it's nearby and behaving nicely. And if you'd like to support the channel, thank you. It helps us keep the nightlights low and the nature facts cozy, like tucking a blanket around a story so it doesn't catch a cold. Tonight, we're drifting into a gentle topic that feels like the sky itself is whispering, the sleepy facts about total solar eclipses. Not as a big, dramatic event, no fireworks, no shouting, more like a slow dimming of a lamp in a calm room. A quiet alignment, a short, strange, beautiful hush that passes through the world like a shadow with good manners. You don't need to think hard about it. You don't need to imagine anything perfectly. Just let the idea float. A soft day, a softer moment, a little pause in the brightness. As you settle in, notice your breathing, the slow rise and the gentle fall. Let your shoulders loosen, as if they've finally decided to stop holding up the entire universe. Let your jaw relax, like it has nowhere important to speak tonight. Let your thoughts wander, but wander kindly, like a deer stepping through tall grass, not rushing, not searching, simply existing. And now, very gently, we begin. Under the same calm sky, there's a question that rests quietly in the background, like a smooth stone in a pocket. You don't need to solve it. You don't need to answer it quickly. You can simply hold it for a while and let it be warm. What does the living world do when the light changes? Not the loud kind of change, not the dramatic kind, just a gentle shift, like someone turning down the brightness in a peaceful room. Like the sun stepping back for a moment and the land noticing. In nature, light is not only brightness, it's a rhythm, a soft signal, a daily pattern that tells leaves when to open, tells birds when to sing, tells insects when to hum, tells bodies when to rest. Light is a quiet language spoken without words, understood without effort. So when the light changes in an unusual way, slowly dimming in the middle of the day, what happens? Maybe the wild doesn't react the way we imagine. Maybe it simply adjusts. A bird pauses, as if it's listening again. A breeze shifts, cooler, calmer. A field becomes slightly more silent, not empty, just softer. And maybe that's the gentle lesson tucked inside the question. The world doesn't need an explanation to become calm. It just becomes calm when the cues invite it. Sometimes people imagine an eclipse as something grand and overwhelming, but tonight we're holding it differently, like a small, quiet wonder, like a natural lullaby written in shadows. If your mind wants to wander, it can wander. If it wants to stay, it can stay. Either way, the question remains kind. What does the living world do when the light changes? It might do what you can do right now. Slow down, soften, and listen. And if you find yourself smiling slightly at the idea of animals checking the clock because the sky looks like evening, that's okay. It's a gentle kind of funny. Nature doesn't need calendars, but it has rhythms so steady they feel like invisible timepieces, quietly ticking in leaves and wings and breath. So let the question drift with you now, like fog moving through grass, like a shadow sliding over water, like a slow, comfortable thought that doesn't need to become anything else. And with that question resting softly beside us, we begin to look at the world where this story happens. A landscape of light, air, and gentle shifts. Imagine an open landscape that feels familiar to the body, even if you've never been there. A wide field, a stretch of quiet shoreline, a place where the air has room to breathe. The afternoon is warm, but not heavy. Light falls evenly across the ground. The colors of the world look normal, greens and browns and soft blues, like they're resting in their usual places. In the distance, birds call in simple phrases. Somewhere closer, an insect hums with the confidence of something that has done this 1,000 times. And then, slowly, almost politely, the light begins to change. Not suddenly, not sharply. It's more like someone turning a dimmer switch, one careful notch at a time. The brightness thins, shadows soften. The air cools a little, as if it's trying on an evening sweater early, just to see how it feels. This is where the gentle science steps in, quietly, without interrupting the mood. A total solar eclipse happens when the moon passes between the sun and the earth, and for a short time, it covers the sun's bright face from our view. It's a simple alignment, 3 bodies moving in patient rhythm. No rush, just steady motion, the kind that has been happening for longer than any memory. And because the moon's orbit is slightly tilted, this alignment doesn't happen every new moon. Most months, the moon passes a little above or below the sun from our perspective. The sky keeps its usual brightness, and nobody notices anything unusual. But sometimes, the timing is just right. The line is clean, and the day becomes quieter. What's beautiful is how gentle it all feels. The sun doesn't leave. It doesn't switch off. It's simply covered, briefly, like a bright lamp behind a curtain. And the landscape responds not with panic, not with drama, but with subtle shifts. A little cooler, a little dimmer, a little more still. The river doesn't rush. It's not trying to impress anyone. The trees don't worry. They just stand expertly. And the wind continues doing what wind does best, moving softly, without needing credit. As you listen, let the setting settle in your mind like a calm picture. You don't need to hold it tightly. Just let it exist. A field, a shoreline, a quiet place where light changes slowly, and the wild adjusts in its own gentle way. And now that the world is set, we can follow the soft traveler at the center of tonight's story. The moon's shadow, gliding across the earth like a quiet ribbon. Now, imagine the moon's shadow, not as something dramatic, but as something tender. A traveler made of shade. A moving patch of dimness that drifts across the earth like a soft blanket being pulled gently over a sleeping shoulder. This shadow has layers, and we can describe them in the calmest way possible, like labeling different kinds of dusk. There is the penumbra, the lighter part of the shadow. This is where the sun is only partly covered. The day still feels like day, just dimmer, softer around the edges, like the world has turned down its volume. And then there is the umbra, the darkest part of the shadow. This is the small region where the sun is completely covered and totality becomes possible. It's narrow compared to the size of the earth, like a fine brush stroke across a very large canvas. The shadow moves because everything is moving, quietly, constantly. The moon continues along its orbit. The earth turns beneath it, and the path of totality becomes a gentle line across landscapes, over forests, over fields, over ocean, sometimes over mountains that hold the shadow for a moment like a secret. But nothing hurries. Nothing strains. It's all smooth, steady motion, like a slow dance no one needs to clap for. As the penumbra reaches a place first, the people there might notice the light changing, but in the wild, it's even subtler. A bird's song might pause, a breeze might cool, a field might look slightly different, colors less bright, shadows less sharp, everything a bit more muted and dreamy. And as the umbra approaches, the day grows quieter still. Not scary quiet, not empty quiet, just the kind of quiet where you can hear your own breathing and feel that it's enough. If the shadow could speak, it might say something like, "Hello, I'll be here briefly." And then it would keep moving, because it's very polite and doesn't want to overstay. And maybe that's the comfort of it. The shadow arrives, the world shifts, and then it passes. It doesn't cling. It doesn't demand attention. It simply changes the texture of the day for a moment, like a cloud, but far more precise, far more rare, and far more quiet. Let your mind follow that shadow now, like following a leaf floating down a slow river, not to reach an end, just to drift. Because next, we'll arrive at the beginning of the eclipse in a particular place, the first subtle moment when the sun begins to be covered and the day starts to whisper. At first, almost nothing seems different. The world continues being itself, steady, ordinary, calm. Light rests on leaves. The ground holds warm tones. The sky looks like it always does, like it's done this 1,000 times and plans to do it 1,000 more. And then, the eclipse begins. This early phase is sometimes called first contact, the moment the moon starts to move across the sun's face. But the name sounds more official than it feels. In reality, it's subtle. A slow, quiet beginning that doesn't knock on the door loudly, The brightness starts to thin, just a little. Not enough to make anyone gasp, more like the day is gently exhaling. Shadows become softer, less crisp. The light loses a tiny bit of its usual sharpness, as if the sun has put on a thin scarf. Colors start to feel slightly muted, like a photograph with the saturation turned down just one notch. If you were sitting outside, you might notice that the heat on your skin feels different, even before you can explain why. The warmth becomes gentler, less direct, like a hand that was pressing lightly now resting instead. In the wild, this change is not a headline, it's a cue. Birds may continue their usual rhythms at first, because birds, like many of us, don't immediately believe the lighting has changed until it's very obvious. But some might begin to pause between calls. Some might tilt their attention as if listening again. Insects may shift their hum. Leaves may move in the breeze as they always do. Yet the scene feels slightly quieter. It's a little like the moment before evening, when the world starts preparing without saying so. A slow, instinctive settling. And the best part is that you don't need to watch closely. This story isn't asking you to focus hard. It's inviting you to float through it, to let the gradualness be the comfort, because eclipses are not fast, they do not rush, they are patient, steady, and strangely kind. If your mind wants to drift away for a moment, let it. The eclipse will still be moving quietly, without needing you to supervise. The sun and moon have been doing this long before we named it, and they'll keep doing their gentle sky work without needing applause. So let the beginning of the dimming sit in your imagination like a soft shade pulling across a window. And as the day continues to quiet, we'll move into the next gentle shift, the air itself cooling slightly, changing texture, like the world taking on a calmer, evening-like breath. As the eclipse continues, the change becomes a little easier to feel, not because it's loud, but because your senses are quietly good at noticing softness. The sunlight narrows slowly, like a lamp being turned down in a room where everyone is already speaking in whispers. The warmth that was sitting on the ground begins to loosen its hold. The air cools, not sharply, not suddenly, more like a gentle sigh passing over your skin. If you're outdoors in this moment, you might notice it first in the smallest places, the back of your hands, the top of your shoulders, the way your face feels as the light becomes less direct. It's as if the sun has stepped back politely to give the day a little more space. Even the wind can shift during an eclipse, and when it does, it often feels like a subtle rearranging of the atmosphere. Not a gust, not a push, just a light change in direction or texture, like someone smoothing a blanket without waking anyone up. There's a calm piece of science tucked inside this softness. Sunlight warms the ground, and the ground warms the air. As the sunlight decreases, the surface cools a little, and the air above it follows quietly. The whole system responds the way nature usually responds, with patience, with balance, with a slow and steady adjustment. And because the world is so connected, This gentle cooling can ripple outward into the soundscape. The buzz of insects may change. A bird call might space itself differently, as if the singer is considering the hour. A distant dog may even sound a little more thoughtful, though dogs are often thoughtful in their own mysterious way. If nature had a group chat, this would be the moment it sends a single message. Light is changing. Please remain calm and continue being extremely nature. And nature, being nature, does exactly that. The field remains a field. The trees remain trees. The water remains water, reflecting whatever the sky gives it, without critique. There's something comforting about that. The world doesn't seem to ask, why is this happening? It simply notices, and then it settles into the new shade of the moment. As you listen, let that same settling happen in you. Allow your breathing to become slightly slower, as if it's matching the cooler air. Allow your thoughts to soften, as if they're becoming less bright around the edges. And if your mind wanders, let it wander gently, like fog drifting through grass, not trying to find a conclusion. Because this story is not a sprint, it's a slow walk, bare feet on cool earth. And up ahead, the sky begins to take on a new kind of look, like a quiet filter laid across the day. At this point in the eclipse, the world begins to look slightly unfamiliar in the gentlest way. Not strange like a mystery, more like familiar scenery seen through softer light, like you've stepped into a calm photograph. Brightness continues to thin, and the sky can take on a muted tone, as if someone lowered the contrast of the day. The colors of plants and soil may feel a touch less golden, a touch more cool. Greens look quieter, shadows look smoother. Everything seems politely edited for calm. Some people describe this light as flat, but tonight we can call it something kinder, even light, gentle light, light that doesn't show off. And that's one of the sleepy wonders of a partial eclipse. It reshapes the mood without changing the shapes. Trees still hold their leaves. Hills still hold their curves. Water still holds its slow shimmer. Yet your eyes notice that the world's usual sparkle has softened, as if the sun has decided to stop being dramatic for a while. There's a simple reason the light feels different. The sun is still shining, but less of its surface is visible from where you stand. The sunlight reaching the ground is reduced, and that reduction changes how highlights and shadows behave. It's like turning down the brightness on a screen. Everything is still there, just gentler. Even the quality of shade can change. The shadow under a tree may look less harsh. The edges of darkness can appear less sharp, like the day is being careful not to poke anything. And in this softening, the wild continues its quiet routines. A bird may adjust its calling, not a dramatic announcement, just a small change in timing, like a musician pausing between notes to see if the room has become more silent. Insects may hum differently too, responding to the subtle shift in warmth and light. If you listen closely, without trying too hard, you can imagine the landscape making tiny, practical decisions. Rest a little sooner. Move a little less. Wait a little more. And you don't need to treat this like a performance. This moment isn't asking you to do anything. It's inviting you to be in it, to let your attention rest on small observations, the coolness of the air, the softness of the shadows, the way the sky looks like it's wearing a light scarf. And if you catch yourself smiling at the idea that the sun is simply turning down the lights, that's allowed. It's a gentle kind of funny. The sky doesn't need a big explanation to feel different. Sometimes it just feels different. So let the filtered light be a calm blanket over your mind. Let your thoughts become less sharp, less bright, less busy. Because soon, the ground itself will begin to show a quiet trick of light. Little crescents scattered under leaves like tiny moon smiles. Now we come to one of the softest, sweetest details of an eclipse, something you might miss if you're not looking for it, and something you'll never need to rush to find. Under trees, beneath leafy branches, on the ground where sunlight filters through small gaps, the light can begin to form tiny shapes. At first, they look like ordinary patches of brightness, the way sunshine usually dapples a path. But during a partial eclipse, those patches can transform into little crescents, hundreds, sometimes thousands, little moon-shaped slivers scattered across the earth, as if the sky decided to decorate the ground with quiet, curved confetti. This happens because each small gap between leaves acts like a simple pinhole, like a tiny natural projector. Instead of creating a round spot of sunlight, it projects the sun's current shape. And if the sun looks like a crescent up above, the light spots become crescents down below. It's gentle physics. No machinery, no effort. Just leaves being leaves, and light doing what light does. If you imagine a calm forest during this moment, you can picture it clearly. A path under trees, soft shadow, and on the dirt, small luminous smiles, each one a quiet echo of the sky. This is one of those natural phenomena that feels almost like nature is being playful, but in a very sleepy way. Not the kind of playful that jumps around, more like the kind of playful that quietly draws little doodles in the margins of the world. If the trees could speak, they might say, "Look what we made." And then they would go right back to being silent, because trees don't like to brag. The beauty of these crescent shadows is that they feel intimate. You don't have to look high up. You don't have to do anything big. You can simply notice the ground, the humble, patient ground, carrying the eclipse in tiny pieces. And there's something soothing about that. It's a reminder that wonder doesn't always live in grand distance. Sometimes it appears in small details at your feet, where your body already knows how to relax. As you listen, let your attention become that gentle, like sunlight through leaves, like a slow breath, like a quiet mind. You can even imagine your thoughts turning into small crescents too, no longer full circles of worry, no longer complete loops, just soft fragments drifting across a calm inner landscape. Enough light to feel safe, enough darkness to feel rested. And when you're ready, we continue our slow journey. The eclipse keeps moving, and the day keeps dimming. until the sunlight becomes a slimmer shape and the world begins to settle into an even deeper hush. As the light continues to soften, the living world begins to lean into a different rhythm. Not a dramatic shift, no sudden silence like a switch has been flipped, more like a gentle change in spacing. A small pause here, a quieter call there. The soundscape becomes slightly rearranged, like someone moved a few soft pillows around in a room. Birds in particular can be sensitive to light. Their routines often follow the day like a familiar song. Morning calls, midday quiet, late afternoon movement, evening settling. So, when an eclipse dims the afternoon, some birds may begin to behave as if dusk has wandered in early, polite and unannounced. A few may grow quieter, some may call in different patterns. Some might even drift toward resting behaviors, as if they're thinking, well, if the sky looks like evening, perhaps we shall do evening things. It's not confusion in the dramatic sense. It's more like a gentle reconsideration. And isn't that strangely comforting? The wild doesn't demand certainty. It responds to the world as it feels in the moment. It adjusts with flexibility, with softness, with the quiet confidence of something that has lived through countless changing skies. You may also notice how the calls sound different in dimmer light. The air is cooler, sometimes calmer, and sound can carry in a slightly altered way. Distant birds may feel closer. Nearby calls may feel more rounded, less sharp, like the entire landscape is speaking more gently. A soft piece of humor can live here too. Very feather-light. Birds do not own watches, but they still manage to keep a better schedule than most of us. No alarms, no snooze button, just vibes. And as the birds settle or shift, other parts of the wild keep doing their quiet work. Leaves remain still or sway slowly. Insects hum, water moves, the earth continues being dependable. This is what the eclipse offers the landscape. Not a problem to solve, but a moment to respond to. A brief rearrangement of light that the wild meets with small, practical changes. Like a household adjusting when the sun goes behind clouds. As you listen, let the bird's calm flexibility become your own. If your mind has been busy, it can become quieter. If your thoughts have been loud, they can space themselves out. If you've been holding tension, you can let it loosen, one small muscle at a time. The way a bird settles its feathers, and as the day continues to dim, we drift toward another quiet shift, closer to the ground, closer to the air, where insects and small creatures respond to the softening light like a gentle tide turning. Now we bring our attention closer, down into the smaller worlds that live in grass, along tree bark, near the edges of water. Insects experience the day differently than we do. Their lives often follow subtle cues, light intensity, temperature, humidity, the angle of the sun, the softness of shade. They don't need to understand an eclipse to respond to it. They simply feel the shift, and they adjust in their own quiet ways. As the sunlight decreases, some insects may become less active, as if the day has become too gentle for their usual busyness. Others may begin to stir, sensing a dusk-like moment. and the sound of the landscape, the humming, the buzzing, the tiny rhythmic presence can change texture. Not louder, not frantic, just different. You can imagine a meadow during an eclipse as a place where the air grows slightly cooler and the insects begin to try on evening. A few more soft chirrs, a few fewer bright day buzzes, the world practicing night briefly, like a lullaby rehearsal. There's a quiet scientific sweetness in this. When the ground cools, the air right above it changes too, and small bodies close to the surface notice these changes quickly. Insects aren't being dramatic, they're simply tuned in. If we could borrow their calm sensitivity, we might live a little softer ourselves, responding to the present moment instead of arguing with it. And yes, we can allow ourselves one tiny sleepy joke, soft as a feather. If insects had calendars, they would still ignore them, and yet somehow arrive perfectly on time. It's impressive. It's also mildly unfair. As the eclipse deepens, the air can feel smoother, the light can feel quieter. The whole space begins to suggest rest, and that suggestion moves through the landscape like a gentle current, touching leaves, touching wings, touching the surface of water. You don't have to analyze any of it. You can simply let it wash through your imagination. Picture the meadow, picture the dimming light, picture the insect's soft chorus shifting like a slow tide, and then bring that same softness back to your body. Let your breathing slow, as if it's following the cooler air. Let your thoughts become less bright, less sharp, more rounded. Let your awareness rest in small details, like the hush between sounds, like the quiet space between one inhale and the next. Because up ahead, the sunlight becomes slimmer still, like a curved sliver in the sky, and the world begins to feel that deeper hush approaching, not with suspense, but with gentle inevitability. As the eclipse continues, the changes in the world are still subtle, but they begin to layer on top of each other like soft blankets. The light grows thinner, the air becomes a little cooler, and in many places, the land itself starts to feel like it's shifting into a different hour, one that usually belongs to late afternoon or early evening, or that gentle in-between time when the day relaxes its grip. Animals don't need words for this. They don't label it. They simply notice. Temperature, especially, is a quiet guide in the natural world. It shapes when creatures rest, when they feed, when they move, when they become still. And as the warmth eases during the eclipse, some animals may subtly adjust their behavior, not dramatically, not urgently, just with a small change in pacing. A grazing animal might lift its head for a moment, as if checking the air. A creature in shade might remain tucked in a little longer, because the shade now feels extra shade. A small mammal might pause at the edge of cover, listening, sensing, then deciding that stillness is the best choice. These are tiny decisions, gentle ones, the kind of decisions nature makes all day, every day, without fuss. And there's something comforting about that, this quiet intelligence. A creature doesn't need to know what an eclipse is. It only needs to live inside, the moment it's being given. If you imagine a fox curled in tall grass, or a deer resting in brush, or a lizard on a warm rock that is now slightly less warm, you can feel how the world's shift might reach them, like a soft hand turning down the heat just a little. A whisper of humor fits here, very lightly. Humans see the sky dim and think, should we take a photo? Animals feel the air cool and think, ah, excellent, less effort. It's a very practical worldview, and honestly, it's kind of inspiring. Even the sounds around the animals might change. Birds spacing out their calls, insects altering their hum. And as those sounds shift, some creatures may become more still, simply because the world feels quieter. It's not fear, it's not panic, it's a gentle listening, and you can do the same. Let your attention rest on the coolness of an imagined breeze. Let your breathing slow, matching the air. Let your thoughts take on the same animal-like simplicity. Not solving, not planning, just noticing, then settling. Because soon, the sun will become a slimmer and slimmer curve, and the day will begin to look like it's wearing a crescent smile. Now, the eclipse becomes easier to see, still gentle, still unhurried, but more clearly shaped. The sun, from where we stand, begins to look like a slim crescent, a curved sliver of light, like a quiet smile drawn across the sky. Not a bright, bold grin, more like the kind of smile you give someone when you don't want to wake the sleeping cat. The landscape responds to this change in light with a deepening softness. Colors dull slightly. Shadows feel less intense. The world looks like it has stepped into a calmer setting on the same familiar stage. And what's interesting is how the quality of light shifts, not just the amount of it. The brightness is reduced, yes, but the feeling of daylight becomes different too. It can feel less warm, less golden, more silvery, more muted, like the day is gently practicing twilight. There's a slow, quiet elegance in it. This is also where many people begin to notice the way their own body responds. You might feel sleepier, even if it isn't late. Not because the eclipse is making you sleep, but because dimmer light can nudge the nervous system toward calm. The body hears, in a small way, the familiar cue. Light is lowering. It might be time to soften. And tonight, we let that cue be kind. There's a simple scientific tenderness to remember. The sun is unimaginably bright, and we usually see it as a full, overwhelming disk. During an eclipse, that brightness is covered bit by bit, and the world is allowed to experience a gentler version of the sun's presence, like hearing music from another room, softened by distance. The crescent sun above and the crescent shadows below. The sky and earth quietly mirroring each other. And yes, if you find yourself thinking, the sun looks like it's on a diet, you're not alone. But we'll keep the joke sleepy and polite, because the sun has done a lot for us and deserves kindness. The real comfort here is the slow pace. Nothing snaps, nothing jolts. The sun becomes a slimmer curve, one patient moment at a time. So allow your mind to follow that softness. Picture the crescent in the sky, thin light, curved and calm. Picture the land beneath it, quiet, cooled, listening. And picture yourself sinking a little deeper into rest, like the world is giving you permission. Because as the crescent narrows, we begin to approach the next gentle threshold, where the hush grows wider and the atmosphere itself feels like it's holding a slow breath. As the eclipse nears its deepest point, the dimness becomes more noticeable, not as drama, but as a widening calm. The day doesn't collapse into darkness, it simply quiets. The light thins further, and the landscape takes on a soft, unfamiliar tone. It's like the world is turning its face toward evening earlier than planned, and doing so with good manners. The air feels cooler now, and the shadows feel gentler, as if even darkness is trying not to be rude. The hush that arrives isn't just visual. It can feel emotional, like a room becoming quiet when someone opens a window and the outside air changes the mood. Bird calls may become less frequent. Insects might alter their steady chorus, and the spaces between sounds feel larger, like pauses in a slow song. This is not a silence of absence. It's a silence of settling. The sky can look slightly different in color, less bright blue, more subdued. The horizon may begin to glow in odd ways. The entire world seems to notice that something is shifting, and in response, it becomes a little more still. If your mind wants to label this moment as important, it can. But tonight, we keep it simple. It's a gentle threshold, a deepening twilight in the middle of day, arriving like a soft blanket being pulled higher over your shoulders. There's a quiet truth hidden here. Nature is good at transitions. Day to night, warm to cool, busy to calm. It doesn't need a signpost. It doesn't need to be warned. It simply moves with the change, and you can move with it too. Let your breathing become slightly slower, slightly deeper. Let your muscles loosen, like the day is loosening its brightness. Let your thoughts become less urgent, less sharp. If you're still awake and listening, you're doing perfectly. If you drift in and out, that's also perfect. This story doesn't mind. The sky doesn't mind. The wild doesn't mind. A tiny, gentle joke can float by here, barely audible. Somewhere, a bird is quietly thinking, "Is it bedtime?" And the sky is quietly replying, "Not exactly, but it's okay to act like it is." And then we continue drifting forward toward a beautiful, calm phenomenon that appears as totality draws near. A ring of sunset-like glow around the horizon, as if dusk has formed a circle. Now, as the eclipse approaches totality, something quietly astonishing can happen. The horizon begins to glow like sunset in every direction. It isn't a bright, fiery sunset. It's softer than that, more like a warm rim of color at the edge of the world. A gentle band of dusk encircling the landscape, as if the earth is wearing a delicate bracelet of twilight. Imagine standing in a wide open place, field, shoreline, plain, where you can see far. The sky above is dimmer now, and the land is cooled, and the horizon glows all around you like a slow halo. The calm science beneath this wonder is simple. Totality happens in a narrow path. Inside that path, the sun is fully covered. But beyond it, just outside the shadow, sunlight still reaches the earth as normal. So around the edges of the shadowed region, the world is still lit, still bright, still daytime. And that distant daylight can look like a ring of sunset when it's viewed from within the dimness, a circle of faraway day. It's one of those moments where you don't need to add meaning. The moment already has enough beauty to be itself, and yet it naturally invites a quiet reflection. How often in our lives does calm sit in the middle of brightness? How often does the edge of something hold a glow we didn't expect? But we don't need to push the thought. We let it float, like a leaf on water, like a warm color on the horizon. If you want a micro-humor here, it can be as soft as a yawn. It's like the world is surrounded by sunset, which is frankly a little show-offy, but we'll forgive it because it's very pretty. And while the horizon glows, the center of the sky grows darker. Not night dark, just deep twilight. The kind of twilight that makes everything feel quiet and close and gentle. If your eyelids feel heavy, let them. If your breathing feels slow, let it. If your mind feels like it's drifting farther away from thought, let it. Because we're nearing the moment where the sky's alignment becomes perfectly clear. Sun, moon, and earth in a slow, patient line. And we can explain that alignment in the simplest, sleepiest way. Here, near the heart of the eclipse, the story becomes beautifully simple. 3 bodies, 1 line. A quiet alignment that has been rehearsed for millions of years. The sun shines, steady and constant. The moon moves in its gentle orbit. The earth turns beneath them, holding landscapes, oceans, forests, fields, everything resting on its surface like a sleeping animal. A total solar eclipse happens when the moon passes between the sun and the earth and covers the sun's bright face from our view. That's all. No struggle, no drama, just geometry drifting through space with a slow, patient grace. And what makes total solar eclipses feel rare is that the moon's orbit is slightly tilted compared to the Earth's path around the sun. So most new moons pass a little above or below the sun from our perspective. The sky stays bright, and the day stays ordinary. But sometimes, the timing is just right. The angle is just right. The line becomes perfect. It's like 3 dancers arriving at the same point in a slow choreography. Not because they tried harder, because they didn't need to. They simply followed the paths they always follow. And the paths happen to meet in a way that creates a brief, quiet wonder. And the moon, though smaller, fits the sun in our sky in a way that feels almost too neat. The sun is vastly larger, of course, but far away. The moon is much closer, and so, from our perspective, they can match in size, like 2 coins held at different distances until they overlap perfectly. If you like a tiny, sleepy joke, the universe is excellent at perspective tricks. It could run a magic show, but it prefers to stay humble. And because the moon's shadow is narrow, totality is experienced only along a thin path across the earth, a small ribbon of dimness moving across a very large world, touching certain places briefly, then continuing on. And what do those places do? They cool, they quiet, they breathe. Just like you can. Let your breath settle into the calm of the alignment. Let your mind loosen its grip on figuring things out. Let the story carry you as gently as the sky carries the shadow. Because next, we'll follow that shadow path itself. A quiet ribbon moving over land and water, gliding across the earth with tender precision. Now, we follow the shadow as it moves across the earth, quietly, carefully, like a soft ribbon laid across the world. The path of totality is often surprisingly narrow. Compared to the size of continents and oceans, it's a thin corridor, sometimes only a few hundred kilometers wide, where the moon covers the sun completely. Outside that corridor, the eclipse is still present, but partial. The day still dims, but totality belongs to that slender moving line. It's a gentle idea, one small traveling shadow brushing across an enormous planet. If you imagine the Earth from above, clouds drifting, coastlines curving, forests breathing, you can picture that narrow path gliding along the surface. It crosses water where the shadow becomes a soft stain on the sea. It crosses land where fields and towns and mountain ridges receive a brief twilight like a quiet visitor. And the shadow doesn't hurry. It simply goes where the Earth's turning and the moon's orbit carry it. There's something calming about that kind of inevitability. Nothing is forced. Nothing is chased. The shadow arrives because the world is moving the way it always moves. In many places, as the shadow approaches, the air becomes cooler and the light becomes muted, like the landscape is slipping into an evening mood. Birds may quiet a little. Insects may shift their hum. Animals may pause and listen, not because they're alarmed, but because the world has become a different kind of hour. If we're honest, it's a little sweet to imagine all these creatures, each in their own routine, receiving the same subtle message from the sky. Light is changing, you may soften now, and the earth complies beautifully. A thin line across the globe, a short twilight in the middle of day, a reminder that even something vast can feel gentle. As you listen, let your mind travel with the shadow, the way you might follow a slow cloud across a calm sky. No goal, no destination, just movement that soothes. If your thoughts are busy, you can place them on that moving ribbon of shade. Let them drift. Let them soften. Let the world turn without you needing to steer it. And as the shadow continues its quiet glide, the eclipse grows deeper. The light becomes stranger in its softness, less golden, more silvery, like the world is about to enter a slightly different chapter of twilight. Just before totality, the light can take on a quality that feels unfamiliar, not unsettling, just new, like seeing a familiar room in a different kind of lamp glow and realizing it has been peaceful all along. The brightness is low now, but it isn't the dimness of ordinary evening. The sun is still up, yet the world looks like it's wearing a quiet filter. Colors flatten slightly, highlights feel subdued, shadows seem smoother, softer at the edges. Some people describe this as a silvery light or a metallic light. Tonight, we can call it moon-tinted daylight, a kind of daylight that has learned how to whisper. If you stand outside in this moment, you may notice how your surroundings feel calmer without anyone doing anything at all. The landscape simply exists in softer contrast. Trees look gently cut out against the sky. Grass looks darker, richer. Water looks more like glass, and the air, often a little cooler now, feels like it has slowed down. There's a simple reason the light feels different. The sun's disk is reduced to a very thin shape. The nature of the light reaching the earth changes. It becomes less direct, less abundant, and the way it scatters can feel unusual compared to normal daylight. But you don't need to analyze it. You can simply let it be a mood, a quiet twilight mood, arriving in the middle of day, like an unexpected lullaby. Even the soundscape can reflect it. Birds may quiet further. Insects may trade one kind of hum for another. The spaces between sounds can grow larger and more noticeable, like the world is leaving room for silence. If the earth could speak, it might say, "Let's all take a breath." And in that breath, your body can soften too. Let your shoulders drop just a little more. Let your hands unclench if they've been holding anything at all. Let your forehead smooth, as if the light itself is smoothing it. A micro joke, very gentle. This is the sky's version of do not disturb. And the earth, for once, actually respects it. As we drift onward, we come closer to the edge of totality, where the last bright pieces of sunlight can appear in a delicate, jeweled pattern along the moon's rim. Near the threshold of totality, something delicate can happen, something that feels like the sun is leaving little sparkles behind as it goes. As the moon covers almost all of the sun, the last bits of sunlight can shine through the moon's uneven edges. Through valleys and dips along the lunar surface, instead of a smooth, continuous crescent, you may see small, bright points, like a string of beads. These are called Bailey's beads, and they're as gentle as they sound. Not a burst, not a flash meant to startle. More like a handful of tiny lanterns quietly refusing to go out all at once. It's one of those details that makes space feel intimate, not distant, not cold, just textured and quietly beautiful. The moon, which we often think of as smooth and simple, has a rugged outline, craters, ridges, old scars from long ago impacts. And those ridges and valleys become visible in a new way, not by shape, but by light slipping through them. A little whisper of humor fits here, soft and affectionate. Even sunlight tries to leave politely, one little bead at a time. No dramatic exit, just a courteous fade. And while those beads appear, the world below remains calm. The air stays cool. The landscape stays hushed. A field doesn't suddenly become a different place. It simply becomes quieter, dimmer, and more aware of its own stillness. If you imagine yourself standing under a wide sky, you can picture those beads like tiny, bright pearls on the edge of darkness. A gentle necklace of light, brief, delicate, and then gradually dissolving. This is also a moment where the mind, if it tends to race, can choose instead to rest, because nothing in this story asks you to speed up. The eclipse does not demand attention the way loud things do. It invites attention the way quiet things do, softly, patiently, with space to drift. So let your thoughts become as small and simple as those beads, one thought at a time, one soft sparkle at a time, then fading into calm. Your breathing can slow in the same way, a gentle inhale, a gentle exhale, like light slipping through a narrow gap and then disappearing. And as the final beads dim, we arrive at the next tender phenomenon, the diamond ring, a single bright point beside the dark circle, like the last polite sparkle before totality. Just before totality, or just after it, there can be a moment that feels almost ceremonial, like the sky quietly putting on jewelry. When most of the sun is covered and only one bright point remains, that point can gleam beside the dark disk of the moon. Around it, the faint glow of the sun's outer atmosphere can begin to appear. The result looks like a diamond ring, one bright diamond and a soft, pale band. It's a poetic name, and it fits. Not because it's flashy, but because it feels precise. A brief elegance, a tiny highlight in a world that has become muted and still. The science under it is simple. The bright point is the last direct sunlight slipping past the moon's edge, and the faint band is the beginning of the corona becoming visible as the sun's face is hidden. But tonight, we don't hold the science tightly. We hold it like a warm mug in both hands. Comfortable, gentle, enough. If you imagine this moment, let it arrive slowly. The world is dim, the horizon glows, the air is cool. And then, one bright point, like a tiny jewel in the sky, a whisper of humor, soft as a yawn. The universe has excellent taste in accessories, and thankfully, it doesn't try to sell us any of them. And then, that bright point fades, because the moon's movement continues, steady and patient, and we slide into totality. The diamond ring is brief, like a single note played softly at the edge of a song. It doesn't linger, it doesn't insist. It simply appears, then passes, leaving the sky quieter than before. As you listen, let that passing be soothing. Let your thoughts do the same. Appear, then pass. Let your worries do the same. Rise, then soften. Let your body do the same. Hold, then release. Because now we're nearing the heart of the eclipse, the moment when the sun's bright face is fully covered and the world becomes a deep, velvety twilight. Not dramatic, not alarming, just quietly unforgettable. And then, totality arrives. The sun's bright disk is fully covered by the moon, and the world slips into a deep, velvety twilight. Not the darkness of midnight, not the dimness of a storm. More like a hush that feels almost tender. A brief night-shaped moment placed gently in the middle of day. The air can feel cooler now, as if the warmth has stepped back to let stillness take its place. The wind may soften, or shift, or pause. The landscape looks different, not because anything has changed its shape, but because the light has changed its nature. Colors are muted, edges are calm. The world looks like it has stopped trying to sparkle. And in the sky, something delicate can appear. the sun's corona, a pale, feathery glow around the dark circle of the moon. It can look like soft silk threads, like a gentle halo, like light that has learned how to be quiet. The wild below may respond in its own subtle ways. Birds may quiet as if evening has arrived. Insects may change their chorus. Animals may pause, listening. The world does not panic. It does not rush to interpret. It simply becomes a little more still. If you imagine standing in this moment, you can feel it as a kind of collective exhale, as if the planet, for a few minutes, is allowed to rest its brightness. And you can rest too. Let your breathing become slow and even. Let your body sink into whatever supports you. Let your mind stop trying to hold the whole day together. A tiny micro-humor can float by, barely a whisper. Even the sun is taking a short break. You're allowed to take one too. And while totality lasts only a short time, it doesn't need to be long to be meaningful. It's like a lullaby verse, brief, but enough to soften you. Because soon, we'll look closer at what the corona really is. This quiet outer atmosphere of the sun, usually hidden, now revealed like a secret told gently in the dark. In the soft twilight of totality, the sun reveals something it usually keeps hidden. Around the dark circle of the moon, a pale glow can appear, delicate, feathery, and strangely calm. This is the corona, the sun's outer atmosphere, normally washed out by the brightness of the sun's face. During a total solar eclipse, the bright disk is covered, and the corona becomes visible, like a quiet curtain lifting on a gentle secret. The corona doesn't look like a solid ring. It often appears as fine, wispy strands that stretch outward, like silk threads or soft white petals of light. Sometimes it looks slightly uneven, with longer streamers in certain directions. The details can feel almost hand-drawn, like the sun is sketching with light, but using the softest pencil it owns. And what's soothing is how calm it all seems. The corona isn't loud. It doesn't flare at you like a spotlight. It simply glows, quietly, like moonlit mist. There's gentle science here, but we'll keep it cozy. The corona is made of extremely hot plasma, so hot that it's difficult to imagine, and also not necessary to imagine right now. What matters tonight is the feeling of it. The sun has layers, and the eclipse allows us to see one of them, briefly, without the usual glare. It's like meeting someone in a quiet room instead of a noisy party. You notice details you couldn't notice before. You hear the softer parts of the story. And while the corona hangs there in the dim sky, the world below remains still. The air stays cool. The horizon glows. The soundscape feels hushed. If you like a tiny line of humor, kept very soft, the sun has an aura, apparently, and it's surprisingly tasteful. Let that image settle into your mind like a calming picture, a dark, smooth circle in the sky, surrounded by delicate white light, threads, petals, feathers, floating outward into space. And now, let your own body mirror that softness. Let your breath move gently outward like the corona's streamers. Let tension drift away from you in thin, pale strands. Let your thoughts become light and wispy, present, but not heavy. Totality is brief, but it feels wide. And as we remain in this quiet moment, we begin to notice other delicate details, like small pinkish arcs on the sun's edge, gentle features called prominences. Along the edge of the dark moon, during totality, you might see something that looks like a tiny blush of color, soft pink or rose red, glowing quietly against the dim sky. These are solar prominences, arcs of hot plasma held in place by the sun's magnetic fields. They can look like small loops or flame-like shapes, but tonight we won't treat them like flames. We'll treat them like embers seen from far away, gentle, distant, and surprisingly delicate. The color comes from glowing hydrogen, and even that can be said in a sleepy way. A simple element, quietly shining, briefly visible. A small signature of the sun's complexity, offered to us in a calm moment when the bright surface is hidden. And isn't that a comforting pattern? Sometimes you only notice the soft details when the brightest thing steps back. Prominences can appear like little petals on the rim of darkness, like curved brush strokes, like quiet ornaments the sun wears without needing anyone to comment on them. If you imagine them now, keep the picture simple. The moon is a smooth, dark circle. The corona is pale and feathery around it, and at the edge, tiny rosy arcs like distant lanterns, a micro-humor barely there. Even the sun has a special occasion look, and it chose pink. Very classy. Down on Earth, life continues being life. The wild stays quiet. Birds may remain subdued. Insects may shift their chorus. The air stays cool, and the light remains dim enough to feel like a deep, gentle dusk. And you, listening now, can become part of that stillness. You don't need to hold on to every fact. You can simply hold the mood. Soft light, calm sky, quiet world. Let your breathing remain even. Let your eyelids be heavy if they want to be heavy. Let your thoughts drift like those pale corona streamers, moving outward, thinning, disappearing. Because totality is a short moment and it passes kindly, the sun's bright face will return gradually, and the world will ease back into daylight like someone turning the lights up slowly, careful not to disturb anyone. But before we return, we spend one more gentle moment in this strange twilight, this short night in the middle of day, where even a few stars or planets may peek through, quietly, like shy guests at the edge of a calm gathering. During totality, the sky can become dim enough that a few bright stars or planets may appear. Not many, sometimes just a handful, soft points of light that usually hide in the daytime brightness. It's a little like discovering that the night was always nearby, waiting politely behind the curtain. The horizon still carries that gentle ring of sunset glow, and above, the corona glows in pale threads. And then, there, in the darker sky, tiny lights become visible, as if the universe is quietly reminding you how wide it is, without asking you to think too hard about it. We won't go big and cosmic tonight. We keep it simple. Even in the middle of day, the sky can briefly hold a nighttime mood, a short, night-shaped pause placed softly into the rhythm of the world. On the ground, animals may respond to the dimness in subtle ways. Some birds make quiet as if evening has arrived. Insects might adjust their hum. A grazing animal might pause. A small creature might stay tucked away because the day no longer feels like full day. But it's all gentle. It's all practical. No panic, no drama, just a quiet reconsideration of the hour. If the wild could speak, it might say, "All right, we'll do calm now." And then it would do calm very expertly. And in your own body, you can do the same. Let your breath be slow and steady. Let your thoughts be fewer, softer, and more spaced out. Let the quiet become something you can rest inside. A small, sleepy joke can drift past here, very lightly. Somewhere, a bird is thinking it's bedtime. Somewhere, a star is thinking it's finally getting attention. And you can simply think, good, quiet is here. Totality lasts only a short while, but it can feel longer because the world becomes so still. And then, gently, it begins to change again. A first sliver of sunlight will return. The bright disk will reappear. The landscape will warm slowly. The sounds will resume their normal patterns, like a familiar song returning to its usual tempo. And as that happens, we begin our wonder section, where we let the eclipse become a quiet teacher. Not a teacher with rules, not a teacher with urgency, just a teacher of softness, patience, and dim light. When the light returns, the world doesn't rush to make sense of what just happened. It simply resumes. And in that simple resuming, there's something quietly wise. Nature is comfortable with dimness. In many ecosystems, dim light isn't a problem. It's a normal part of the daily rhythm. Dawn and dusk arrive twice a day, gentle and predictable. Shade lives under trees. Clouds soften sunlight. Seasons change the length of daylight. The wild is familiar with the idea that brightness comes and goes. So when an eclipse brings a brief dimness, it feels less like an emergency and more like a variation, a short, unusual version of a familiar cue. A reminder that light is not a constant, it's a flow. And that reminder can be comforting to a human mind that sometimes treats brightness, productivity, clarity, certainty as the only acceptable state. The eclipse quietly suggests another possibility. Dimness can be safe. Dimness can be restful. Dimness can be a pause. Dimness can be a small permission slip to soften. In the wild, dimness often invites stillness. Birds quiet. Insects shift. Animals rest more. Plants continue being plants, slowly and patiently, unaffected by our sense of importance. The ecosystem doesn't judge the dimness. It simply responds. A soft, affectionate humor fits here. Moss never hurries. Moss is living proof that slow can still be wildly successful. And honestly, it's not wrong. The eclipse becomes a little metaphor, but we keep it gentle. No lesson, no moral, just a quiet observation. The world can become dim and still remain steady. Life continues, breath continues, the earth continues turning, and you can too. If you've been carrying bright thoughts, sharp, busy, crowded, you can let them dim a little, not disappear, just soften around the edges, like the light during the eclipse becoming kinder. Let your breathing stay slow and even. Let your body feel supported. Let your mind rest in the idea that you do not always need full brightness to be okay. Because next, we'll drift into another gentle wonder, the patience written into orbits and cycles, how the sky repeats itself quietly over time, returning again and again without hurry. An eclipse feels rare when you're inside it, but from the sky's perspective, it's part of a pattern, one more quiet alignment inside a world full of cycles. The moon circles the earth circles the sun. Seasons return, tides rise and fall. Night follows day, day follows night. The planet repeats itself like a calm refrain, and most of the time it does so without being noticed. Eclipses belong to that same family of repetition, just a more particular, more precise verse. They arrive through timing, through geometry, through patience. The sky doesn't hurry into an eclipse. It drifts into one. It takes its time. And when it's done, it drifts back out again. There's something soothing about that kind of patience, because it's a patience that doesn't require effort. It's not trying to be patient. It simply is. If you imagine the earth turning slowly beneath the moon's path, you can feel the steadiness of it. Forests, oceans, cities, deserts, everything moving through time together, held by a rhythm older than any schedule you've ever stared at on your phone. A tiny, sleepy joke fits here. The moon is an excellent scheduler. It just never sends calendar invites. It simply arrives and expects you to notice. And maybe that's what patience is in nature. Arriving without forcing, returning without demanding, trusting the rhythm to carry everything forward. The eclipse, then, is not just a moment of dimness. It's a demonstration of quiet timing, a reminder that big things can happen slowly, that change can be gradual, that precision can be gentle. And if your mind has been feeling impatient lately, if it's been tapping its foot inside your thoughts, you can offer it another rhythm, a slower one, a softer one that doesn't need to rush toward an outcome. Let your breath be a cycle, in and out. Let your attention be a tide, coming in and going out. Let your thoughts be clouds, drifting and thinning and dissolving. Because next we'll move into the idea of memory, how landscapes and bodies and places keep a faint after feel of what passes through them, like the eclipse leaving a gentle imprint even after the light returns. After the eclipse, the world returns to its usual brightness, slowly, kindly, like someone turning the lights up with care. And yet, even as the day brightens again, there can be a small, lingering feeling in the landscape. Not a dramatic after, just a faint imprint, a soft memory. The ground warms back up, but it may take its time. Air currents settle into their familiar patterns again. The bird calls space themselves differently, then return to the usual rhythm. Insects resume their steady hum. The world doesn't announce that it's back. It simply becomes itself again, and still. The moment leaves a trace, the way a cool handprint lingers on warm stone for a little while. Nature keeps memory in gentle ways. Tree rings hold seasons in thin lines, Sediment holds old water in layers. Trails hold footsteps for a day, then soften. Even the air holds memory of rain, of heat, of wind, until it drifts into something new. So it makes sense that an eclipse, even brief, can leave a delicate afterfeel, a slightly cooler patch of shade in your mind, a softened sense of time, the quiet awareness that the world can change its light and still feel safe. If your own mind has been busy, you can treat the eclipse like a small internal weather event. It passed through, it cooled things down, it rearranged the mood, and then it moved on. No harm done, no fixing required, just a gentle shift and then a gentle return. A tiny, sleepy humor can float by here. The sky basically said, "I'm going to dim the lights for a moment," and then it actually cleaned up after itself. Honestly, a role model. As you listen, let your body hold on to the calm memory of this story. Not every detail, just the feeling, the coolness of dim light, the softness of a quiet horizon, the sense that rest can happen even in the middle of day. And if you drift towards sleep now, that's perfectly aligned with the theme. The eclipse offered a brief twilight. You can offer yourself one too. Because next, we widen the lens from memory to responsiveness. How ecosystems adjust without panic, without announcements, simply through gentle feedback. The wild has a way of adapting that feels like quiet intelligence. In nature, adjustment rarely looks like a meeting. There's no bell that rings to say, "Attention everyone, the light is changing." No signs are posted, no instructions are read aloud, and yet the living world responds subtly, smoothly, because ecosystems are built on gentle feedback. Light changes and behavior shifts, temperature changes and activity changes, sound changes and attention changes. During an eclipse, the cues are different from normal day, but they're still cues, and the ecosystem treats them the same way it treats any natural signal. It listens, then it adjusts. Birdsong may pause or reorganize. Insects may hum in a different register. Some animals settle, others stir. Plants continue their slow work, because plants have always been champions of taking your time. The important part is that none of it is frantic. It's responsive, not reactive. The wild doesn't dramatize the moment. It simply fits itself to the moment. That's one of the quiet kinds of intelligence in nature. The ability to change without making noise about it. And you can borrow that. If your day changes, you can adjust without panic. If a mood shifts, you can soften instead of fighting it. If your energy lowers, you can rest without guilt. A small, gentle joke lives here, like a leaf drifting past. Humans love announcements. Big update. Important news. Nature prefers subtlety. It just changes the lighting and lets everyone figure it out. Ecosystems are networks, and networks respond through small shifts. When the temperature cools, the air holds moisture differently. When the light dims, certain behaviors become less useful and others more useful. And the system finds a new balance, quietly. This kind of balance isn't perfect. It doesn't need to be. It's simply alive. It moves, it adjusts, it returns. So as you listen, consider the comfort of not needing to be fixed. You can be like an ecosystem, responsive, gentle, self-correcting over time. Let your breathing be a feedback loop. Slow in, slow out. Let your body settle into its own balance. Let your thoughts become fewer and softer, because next, we'll drift into a particularly calming idea. Quiet cooperation, the way life often supports life without fanfare. In the eclipse's brief twilight, the wild can feel especially interwoven, like a soft tapestry of shared calm. Cooperation in nature doesn't always look like teamwork. Sometimes it looks like simply not getting in each other's way. Sometimes it looks like timing. Sometimes it looks like a quiet exchange, pollen carried, seeds dispersed, shade offered, shelter shared. And during the eclipse, when the light dims and the air cools, the wild can feel unusually interwoven, not because it suddenly becomes different, but because the quiet makes connections easier to notice. In the softened soundscape, a bird call travels farther. In the cooler air, scents may drift differently. The boundaries between my space and your space feel gentler, like the whole landscape has relaxed its shoulders. We can picture a meadow where insects hum softly at the edge of grass, a tree line where birds settle into quieter patterns, a small stream where water continues its slow, patient flow, every part of the scene quietly supporting the others by simply continuing to be itself. The tree holds shade. The shade cools the ground. The cool ground changes the air. The air changes the insects. The insects change the birds. The birds change the rhythm of the morning that will come later. Not a battle, a web, a calm network of small influences. And this network doesn't need a leader. It doesn't need a plan. It simply exists in relationship, quiet cause and effect, like a lullaby made of connections. A featherlight joke can rest here. Nature is basically one big group project, except somehow it works, even though nobody replies to emails. What the eclipse adds to this web is a brief shared cue, a dimness that touches everything at once. The wild responds as a whole, not through a single action, but through many tiny adjustments happening together. And that's comforting, isn't it? The idea that a system can soften together. As you listen, let yourself be part of that softness. You don't have to hold everything alone. You don't have to do anything loud to belong to the moment. You can simply rest inside it, like a leaf resting on water, held without effort. Let your breathing feel connected to the calm air of the story. Let your thoughts feel like part of a larger quiet. No need to fight them, just let them drift. Because next, we'll reflect on timing, the poetry of rhythms returning, patterns repeating, and the gentle certainty that the sky, like the seasons, always knows how to come back to itself. Timing in nature often feels like music, not music that demands attention, just a steady, familiar rhythm in the background of everything. Tides, seasons, sunrise, sunset, migration, flowering, resting. The world has a pulse, and most of the time it beats so quietly, we forget it's there. An eclipse is a special kind of timing, precise and rare, yet still part of the same slow rhythm. It's the sky playing a different verse of a song it already knows. The moon arrives at the right place. The earth turns at the right pace. The sun holds steady in the distance. And for a short time, light changes shape. It's all timing, not rushed timing, patient timing. And when you think about it that way, the eclipse feels less like an event and more like a gentle performance the universe puts on without needing applause. A tiny, sleepy joke can live here. The moon is extremely punctual. It just refuses to coordinate with anyone, which, honestly, is a vibe. In our own lives, timing can feel stressful because we try to control it. We want things now. We want clarity now. We want answers now. But nature's timing is rarely immediate. It's cyclical, gradual, returning. Birds don't demand that spring arrive faster. Trees don't panic when leaves fall. Rivers don't worry about the next bend. They follow timing the way you follow your breath. In and out, in and out. The eclipse, with its slow onset and slow release, reminds us that change can be gentle, that transitions can unfold without pressure, that the world can dim and brighten again without needing to catch up. So as you listen, let the idea of timing soothe you. Whatever is meant to soften in you can soften. Whatever is meant to drift can drift. Whatever is meant to rest can rest. Because next, we'll take this softness into one of the most comforting reflections of all, the way the sky lets go. The shadow passes, the light returns, and nothing clings. The world simply continues, steady, gentle, whole. One of the quiet gifts of an eclipse is how it ends, not abruptly, not sharply, just gradually, kindly, like the sky is careful not to slam any doors. The moon's shadow passes, totality ends, the first bright edge of sunlight returns, and the world begins to brighten again, step by step, as if daylight is being poured gently back into the landscape. No one needs to fix anything. No one needs to recover. The world simply resumes. And that is a very soft lesson. The sky doesn't cling to the shadow, and it doesn't cling to the light either. It allows both. It allows change. It allows passing. The shadow arrives. The shadow leaves, and the earth continues turning, steady, quiet, complete. In our own minds, we often cling. We cling to thoughts, to worries, to plans, to things we wish we said differently, to things we wish were already solved. But the eclipse reminds us of another way to be. Let the moment come, and then let it go. Letting go doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be as gentle as exhaling, and you can practice it right now. On your next inhale, let the breath arrive. On your next exhale, let it leave. No gripping, no chasing, just rhythm. A micro-humor can float by here, soft as a lullaby. The sky is remarkably emotionally mature. It experiences a whole eclipse and doesn't post a single dramatic status update about it. As the light returns, birds begin to space their calls differently. Insects find their daytime chorus again. The air warms slowly. The horizon loses its twilight ring. The landscape becomes ordinary and still beautiful. And that ordinariness is comforting, because it means the world didn't need the eclipse to be worthy. It was worthy before. it's worthy after. The eclipse just offered a quiet pause, like a hand resting on your shoulder for a moment. So let yourself rest with that. If you're drifting towards sleep, keep drifting. If you're awake, let yourself become softer anyway. The sky has shown you how. Dim, then brighten without struggle. And next, we'll close the wonder arc with one more gentle reflection. How rare moments don't need to be loud to matter, and how ordinary life can still carry that same calm glow. By now, the light has returned to something close to normal. The air begins to warm again, little by little, like a blanket gently pulled back into place. The birds find their usual rhythm. Insects settle into their daytime hum. The landscape resumes its ordinary, steady mood. And yet, something remains. Not a big revelation, not a dramatic shift, just a quiet afterglow in the mind, like the soft warmth left in a cup after the tea is gone. Because an eclipse is rare, yes, but it also shows something simple. Wonder doesn't have to be loud. The sky didn't shout. It didn't demand attention. It didn't rush the moment. It dimmed slowly, held a brief twilight, and then returned the day the way you return a sleeping child to bed after carrying them, carefully, gently, without waking them. That kind of wonder is very compatible with rest. And maybe that's why it feels so comforting to think about. It reminds us that big, beautiful things can happen quietly, that rarity doesn't require intensity, that something can be extraordinary without being overwhelming. A tiny, sleepy joke can drift through here like a feather. The eclipse is basically the universe saying, here's something special, and then immediately saying, okay, back to regular programming. Very considerate, honestly. But the true gift is that ordinary life is still enough. The field is still a field. The river is still a river. The trees are still trees, calm, rooted, and unbothered by what they cannot control. And you too can return to ordinary calm. Let your mind release the need to hold on to the moment. You don't have to preserve it perfectly. You can let it become a soft memory, a gentle imprint that reminds you of dimness that felt safe, quiet that felt kind. If you're still awake, your body can begin to prepare for sleep the way the landscape prepared for the eclipse. Slowly and without fuss. Let your shoulders drop. Let your breathing become more even. Let your thoughts become less complete, more like small drifting fragments than full looping stories. And if sleep comes soon, let it come the way the light returned, gradually, softly, with no pressure. Because now we begin the descent section, where we return to our opening question, and we let the answer arrive like a familiar scent in the air. Remember the question we carried earlier, like a smooth stone in the pocket of the story. What does the living world do when the light changes? We don't answer it like a quiz. We answer it like nature does, quietly. It listens, it adjusts, it keeps breathing. During the eclipse, the light softened, and the wild softened with it. Birds paused and shifted their calls. Insects changed their chorus. Animals reconsidered the hour. The air cooled gently. The wind changed texture. The landscape became a little more still. And then, as light returned, the world returned too, without rushing, without clinging, without needing to make up time. The wild did what it always does. It met the moment it was given. And that's the answer that can feel soothing for us too, because we spend so much time trying to control light, literal light, emotional light, mental clarity. We chase brightness. We demand certainty. We treat dimness like a problem. But nature treats dimness like a season, like a cloud, like dusk, something that comes and then goes. A gentle line of humor can sit here, nearly whispered. Nature doesn't catastrophize. It doesn't say, "This day is ruined." It just changes its plans a little and carries on. So tonight, you can do the same. If your thoughts dim, let them dim. If your energy lowers, let it lower. If your mind becomes quiet, let it become quiet. You don't need to force yourself awake. You don't need to force yourself asleep. You can simply allow the shift. Let your breathing feel like a slow answer, in and out, steady and calm. And let your body be part of the ecosystem of you, responding gently to the cues. A softer voice, a slower pace, a story that asks nothing from you except presence. We return to the question one last time, not to solve it, but to rest beside it. What does the living world do when the light changes? It softens, and then it returns. And now, we let the same thing happen in this story. We drift toward quiet closing images, light returning like warm water, the shadow moving on, the day smoothing back into itself. After the eclipse, daylight comes back gradually, like warm water being poured into a cool basin. Not all at once, not in a rush, just a slow filling of brightness, careful and steady. The first thin edge of sunlight widens. The colors of the landscape become more familiar. The air begins to warm again, little by little, and the wind settles into its usual texture, soft, moving, unconcerned. Birds begin to sing more regularly. Their calls space themselves back into daytime patterns. Insects return to their ordinary hum. The whole soundscape slowly remembers the hour, and the land, which briefly wore twilight like a shawl, now slips it off and returns it to the sky. It's soothing to imagine this return not as a recovery, but as a gentle resuming. Nothing was broken. Nothing needs to be repaired. The world simply moved through a different shade of light for a little while. Sometimes our minds forget that. We treat dimness as failure, rest as interruption, quiet as emptiness. But nature shows us another interpretation. Dimness can be part of the rhythm. Quiet can be part of the music. A tiny, sleepy joke can float through here. Daylight comes back like, "Hello again." And the earth is like, "No worries, take your time." As the light warms, the landscape regains its brightness without becoming harsh. The shadows sharpen slightly. The colors deepen. The world feels awake again, but still calm, because it has just passed through a soft pause. And you can keep that pause with you. Even if the day brightens, your mind can remain dimmed in the best way. Quiet, restful, unbothered. You can let brightness exist outside you while you remain soft inside you. Let your breath continue steady, Slow in, slow out. Let your body sink heavier into comfort. Let your thoughts become fewer, like a sky with less cloud. Because next, we let the shadow drift away completely, moving onward over distant land and water, leaving your inner landscape smoother and quieter, as if everything has been gently ironed flat. The moon's shadow continues its journey, moving onward across the earth, over places you may never see, over oceans you may never cross, over mountains that remain quiet and patient. It leaves your landscape the way it arrived, without noise. No door slams, no announcement, just a gradual easing, brightness returning, warmth returning, sounds returning. The shadow doesn't linger. It doesn't cling to the earth. It slides away like a soft ribbon being pulled gently along fabric. And as it goes, the day smooths itself out, like water after a small ripple. There's something deeply calming about a phenomenon that doesn't insist. The eclipse comes. The eclipse goes, and the world remains. Even the animals that shifted their behavior begin to settle back into normal patterns. Birds resume their ordinary calling times. Insects return to their day hum. Creatures that paused begin to move again in small, practical ways. Not because they understand anything, because they simply respond to light, temperature, and timing, the way we respond to blankets, quiet music, and the slow comfort of sleep. A micro-humor can drift by here, barely audible. The shadow visited, dimmed the lights, and left without leaving dishes in the sink. A perfect guest. As the shadow moves on, you can let your own mind become smoother. If you've been holding on to thoughts, you can let them drift away with it. Let them travel beyond your awareness and into the distance, where they become smaller and quieter. Imagine your thoughts like that shadow, moving gently, passing through, leaving no mess behind. And as the day settles, we arrive at a quiet conclusion. Not a moral, not a lesson, just a soft recognition of what nature does best. It transitions without panic. There doesn't have to be a lesson here. Nature doesn't hand out homework. It doesn't give grades. It simply shows us how it lives. And what it shows, through an eclipse, is something very simple. The world can change its light and remain steady. The sky dimmed, the air cooled, the wild adjusted. Then the light returned, and the wild returned too. No urgency, no arguing with the moment, no insistence on control, just response, then rest, then return. If we hold anything from this story, we can hold it gently, like holding a warm stone in your palm, not squeezing, not gripping, just feeling its steady weight. Maybe the calm conclusion is this: we are allowed to soften when the light softens. We are allowed to rest when the world grows quiet. We are allowed to let changes pass through us without turning them into a problem. A tiny whisper of humor, almost a lullaby. The earth handled a whole eclipse with better emotional regulation than most group chats. And now, as we move into the final rest, we reduce the facts and increase the imagery. We return to the motifs that make sleep feel safe: water smoothing, wind easing, distant night sounds settling into steady rhythm. If you're still awake, You don't need to force yourself to sleep. You can simply keep listening as the story grows quieter. Sleep can arrive on its own time, like the eclipse did, slowly, patiently, without being pushed. Let your breathing be the softest thing you notice. Let your body feel heavy, supported, and safe. Let your thoughts fade into simple shapes: water, leaves, wind. And from here we begin to dissolve into calm, into the final rest, where the wild grows soft again, and you drift with it. Now we let the story become simpler. The eclipse has passed, the day has returned, and the wild has resumed its gentle routines. But in our imagination, we keep the softness, we keep the quiet, we keep the feeling of dim light as a kind, temporary blanket. Picture a wide field again, grass moving in small waves. The wind is light and steady, as if it's learned how to walk without making noise. Somewhere far away, water moves, maybe a stream, maybe a lake, maybe the ocean, its surface smoothing itself again and again, practicing calm like a lifelong habit. And now, as you listen, you can let your breathing match that landscape. In, like a slow breeze arriving. Out, like the breeze slipping away. Nothing forced, nothing held too tightly. If your body feels restless, you don't need to argue with it. You can simply invite it to settle, the way grass settles after a wind passes through. The body is allowed to take its time. It's allowed to find comfort gradually, like the light returning after totality, slow, steady, and gentle. Let your shoulders melt downward as if they've decided they don't need to stand guard tonight. Let your hands loosen as if they are releasing something small and unimportant. Let your face soften as if it's remembering how to rest. In the wild, evening is not announced. It just arrives. The air cools, the colors deepen, the soundscape changes, and life responds quietly. We can borrow that. If your thoughts come, let them come. If they pass, let them pass. If they float around like little clouds, that's fine. Clouds don't need to be organized. They only need to drift. A tiny lullaby joke can float by here, barely audible. Even the wind sounds like it's whispering, shh. And the grass is like, yes, agreed. Now imagine the rhythm of the earth beneath you, steady, dependable, holding everything without complaint. The planet turns slowly. Night approaches somewhere. Morning arrives somewhere else. And you are allowed to rest inside that larger rhythm. If it helps, you can picture your mind as a calm shoreline. Thoughts are small waves. They roll in, they roll out. They don't need your help. The water knows what to do. In and out, steady and quiet. And as we keep drifting, we move into an even softer scene, one where the field returns to simple things, dew, leaves, and the kind of silence that feels friendly. The field is ordinary again, and that ordinariness is comforting. Grass stands in small clusters, each blade doing its quiet work of existing. Leaves hang from branches, still or gently swaying. The air carries faint scents, cool earth, green stems, maybe a hint of water nearby. Nothing demands attention. Everything is simply present. If there's dew, it forms slowly. tiny beads appearing where you wouldn't notice unless you looked closely. Nature never rushes its details. It builds softness in thin layers. In the distance, the soundscape is minimal. A few insects, a distant bird, maybe the faintest movement of water. The spaces between sounds feel spacious, like the world is giving you room to breathe. And you can take that room. Let your breathing remain slow and easy. Let your chest rise gently and fall gently. Not a big breath, just enough. If you feel yourself drifting, it's okay to drift. If you feel yourself still listening, that's okay too. Sleep isn't a test, it's a tide. It comes when it comes. A tiny cozy humor can rest here like a warm pebble. The field doesn't have a to-do list. And somehow, it still looks amazing. Notice how that feels, how peaceful it is to exist without an agenda. Your body can do that too. It can exist without trying to accomplish anything. It can be heavy, supported, still. It can be quiet. If a thought appears, something about tomorrow, something about later, imagine placing it gently on a leaf and letting it float down a slow stream. You don't push it away, you don't chase it, you simply let it travel. The field stays calm, the air stays soft, the night grows kinder. And if you want a simple anchor, return to one small detail. The feeling of cool air at the edge of your breath. In, cool, out, warm. Again, in, out. Now we continue deeper into the final rest, into an image of drifting beneath a dark, kind sky, where nothing asks anything of you. Imagine a sky that isn't dramatic, not stormy, not intense, just dark and kind, like a quiet room with the lights low. Above you, the stars, if you choose to picture them, are soft points, scattered gently, not demanding to be counted, not insisting on meaning. They simply exist the way a lullaby exists, present, steady, and calming. And below that sky, the earth feels safe. The ground is steady. The air is cool and smooth. The landscape holds itself without effort. Trees rooted, grass resting, water moving slowly in the distance. You can imagine yourself drifting here, not walking, not searching, just floating gently through the scene like a slow cloud. Thoughts can float too. If a thought comes, it can pass through the sky of your mind like a thin cloud, appearing, changing shape, and dissolving. No need to chase it. No need to push it away. The sky doesn't fight clouds. It simply holds them until they move on. Your breath becomes the quiet engine of this drifting. In, like a slow lift. Out, like a soft settling. A micro-humor can drift by, barely audible. The sky has never once tried to multitask, and honestly, it's thriving. Let your body copy that simplicity. You don't need to hold your muscles tight. You don't need to keep your face alert. You don't need to carry thoughts like boxes. Let everything become lighter. If you want, picture the eclipse again for one moment, but only its softness, the dimming light, the hush, the calm return. Not as an event, but as a mood, a gentle reminder that even a big sky can be quiet. And then, let that memory fade. Now, we go further into stillness. We return to the wild growing soft, the steady rhythms that continue through the night. Insects humming, water smoothing, wind easing. Repetition becomes comfort. Familiar motifs become sleep. The wild at night is not empty. It's simply quieter. Somewhere nearby, insects hum in a steady pattern, small, consistent, like the world keeping time gently. Farther away, water moves with the same patient rhythm it always has. A breeze slides through leaves, and the leaves respond with the softest sound, like paper turning in a book no one is hurrying to finish. Everything feels slow. Everything feels safe. Everything feels like it belongs, and you belong too. Your body, resting now, can become part of this night rhythm, not separate from it, just another calm thing in the dark, breathing steadily, softening gradually. If you notice tension, you can let it melt. Not all at once, just a little, like ice warming in a quiet room, like fog thinning in the morning, like the eclipse shadow drifting away. A tiny micro-humor can appear like a lullaby wink. Even the stones seem relaxed. They've had practice, centuries of practice, very committed. Let that thought fade into calm. Now let your attention return to one simple repetition. Breath. In, out. In, out. Each exhale can feel like sinking slightly deeper into comfort. Each inhale can feel like receiving calm air, cool and gentle. If your mind tries to start a story, you don't need to follow it. You can let it trail off the way a sentence trails off when someone is already half asleep. The night doesn't need your story. It only needs your softness. And as the wild continues its steady, quiet sounds, we move into the final closing, the last gentle lines, the last soft imagery, the last slow settling into sleep. Now we let the world fade into its simplest forms. Dark sky, soft wind, steady breath. The field is quiet. The trees stand calmly. Water continues its slow motion somewhere out there, smoothing itself again and again. Insects hum like a gentle thread stitching the night together. The air feels cool, clean, and kind. Nothing asks you to do anything. Nothing asks you to solve anything. Nothing asks you to stay awake. You can let your body become heavier, like warm sand settling at the bottom of clear water. You can let your thoughts become fewer, like stars that remain even when you stop looking for them. If you're still listening, it's okay. If you drift in and out, it's okay. Sleep is already near, moving slowly toward you, like the moon's shadow moved, steady, quiet, inevitable, gentle. And if any last worries appear, you can treat them like small leaves on water. You don't need to grab them. You can watch them float past. The night has space for everything to pass through. In, out, in, out. Feel how each breath is a soft motion, like a tide that doesn't need encouragement. The earth continues turning beneath you. The sky continues holding its quiet. The wild continues being soft. And now we close with the same calm certainty that carried the whole story, a simple truth, like a final warm hand on your shoulder. Everything flows through the wild. Sleep in that motion.